So I was wondering, like, since we started talking on the 13th of June, till now, like, how would you trace your professional and like artistic development in these over these past 3 months specifically, since we've been talking, like till now? How would you summarize?
Yeah, it's interesting because you joined me in a moment of shift,
Yeah.
definitely. And so it's interesting. I feel more clear as to where I want to go and
Yeah.
what I want to push.
Yeah.
I have a sense of a real kind of attraction. Yes, I feel attracted by meeting people, by talking to people, by not being inwards but going out. I feel like I'm opening, and I am more and more interested in community. And I don't mean community work in the way that people can use it in a disparaging way. I don't, what I mean is like really meet the community, really meet the community, and let the world, the outside, influence your work, and then re-elaborate and throw back out as a response to the world. I mean, to a certain extent, I kind of always done that because I've always been interested in the outside.
Vi racconto un po', che dite? Così sapete un po' cosa stiamo facendo. Respiro, che cosa significa? Ognuno ha la sua interpretazione di che cos'è il respiro. Il respiro è uno spazio tra una pausa e l'altra.
Per me il respiro sono attimi. Un respiro può durare un secondo, può durare diversi secondi e secondo me scandisce moltissimo il tempo.
Parlami del respiro della tromba.
Allora, il respiro della tromba è faticoso, ci vuole tanto fiato. A seconda di come posizioni le labbra e l'intensità della pernacchia cambiano le note. Fammi passare il termine pernacchia.
Passa tutto, guarda. No, sono proprio contenta di venire con voi, è bellissimo. Domani.
A milanese.
Bellissimo. Grazie. Niente. Non vedo l'ora di sentire la banda, che sono così felici, sono praticamente tutte donne.
We started talking about Italian cinema.
Especially at that time, I mean, there was some sort of magical realism, absurdism, like surrealism that happened, like with Jodorowsky and all of those kind of completely different from. But the sentiment, the problems, the issue in the films is always about the people, everybody.
Like for example, in the realm of like surrealism or just the grotesque, I feel for me it's like much more impactful because then it becomes about everything because it's a symbol instead of being about a very specific situation, then becomes about everybody while also being very much about the psyche of a person and very much a people focused thing again.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah. I mean, even Fellini, that doesn't necessarily talk about the destitute,
Yeah, no, I gathered.
It's still making a commentary on the opposite of the destitute and sort
Yeah.
of shows how corrupted they are. I mean, David Lynch is brilliant, and yes, he's also like completely like surreal
Love.
and weird, and he does use sound in a really super interesting way. It's really quite something to see. The change of sound as well, you know, music and all that in cinema, and you know how like there was very little to begin with, which is great if you're kind of stealing little bits of sounds, because there's never, and then after like I don't know 70s onwards, there's no way you can use anything because there's music all the time. But so what I'm interested in and what I really like is the use, and he wasn't the only one, of landscapes. So wide lens panoramic views of landscapes, and then how you can sort of read a landscape differently according to what, you know, Fellini would do it really well with these lines of cardinals going down a hill or whatever, you know. But Pasolini did similar things, and he does have some choral thing, but I think it might be like a sort of religious thing that we all Italians have a little bit in the back of our mind, like processions.
Oh, dov'è?
The presence of Catholicism, which is now disappearing, but it was very, very strong at some point, already less strong when I was little, but depending, because I was in Milan, so a bit too progressive to still be holding on to procession, for example, whilst in the south of Italy that is still huge. So I think the idea of processions, of big landscapes and all that, it's always there.
Press the button.
Coming back to Macondo, I was able to witness how smoothly she operates with the team. It'll be a minute team, it will be a small team, but it will be a productive team, and not in the capitalistic labor-intensive way. But theatre in itself is labor-intensive, but you can't make people work if their heart isn't in it. And sure, I mean, I was working my placement on a project that had been developed already and had been performed multiple times before this iteration, the Chelsea Theatre iteration, on 12th of August 2022. But that also kind of sort of lent an ease of accessing the material from my particular perspective of working as part of the production team, the small production team, and getting to know the people that she was working with and seeing how each person worked their expertise into this completed thing that came to be.
In terms of the strategy of Auto Teatro, was developed through doing this instruction-based performance with Anthony Hampton, under the company name Rotazaza. And we, as I was telling you the last time, the idea was that we wanted to see people that were real on stage and see that moment of like a real taking of making a decision as a process that is interesting to watch as much as is learning and all that. So we as we did more and more shows with participants that were from all sorts of walks in life, you know, not necessarily performers at all. In fact, we found that performer found it harder, strangely, because as a performer you want to be in control.
Right.
But you are not in control as a participant, or as we called it then, a guest performer.
Right.
And we doing more and more of these and talking to the audience and getting their response, it kind of this sense of like lack of responsibility for what you had to do on stage, not having to act, not having to come up, put lines or improvise anything, but just simply respond to instructions. Talking to the audience, we really got the sense that this was a sense of freedom rather than a constriction. And so we decided to make a piece for two people. Initially it was going to be for a Lift festival, but then at Lift we did something else. It was only in 2007 that when we made Etiquette, we really kind of carved out this strategy of autoteatro, which really means there are no performers. Once you press play, the performance happens by following instruction. And slowly you find that you realize who you are within the narrative and all that.
Small projector. Ants coming out of the hall.
Look at a fool
stops now.
And nod back. Press the button now.
Through this entire process, I have learned the importance of networking in the first place, taking initiative, and being a self-starter and reaching out for those opportunities that seem to interest you, sorting through the noise and finding the right opportunity, and then being ready for any kind of curveball that might be thrown your way and taking it as a provocation rather than an obstacle, and an opportunity rather than an unsolvable problem. So that sense of being ready is always there, to start from scratch, to build from the ground up immediately if that is the requirement, and just being open to that. And then fourthly, the networks that you have built, keeping them intact and knowing where it is that you might on your own fall short, but where you can outsource and solidify those equations with people who can make the whole mechanism work together. By bringing it together, you're still the one putting it together as the creator, but it is about identifying those gaps and filling them either through your own skills or through outsourcing. And then also developing those professional relationships with organizations, companies, theater groups, and ensuring that they understand what kind of artist you are. Because that was one of the major motivations for me to seek out an opportunity to work with her was that she is a global artist.
Venue, almost like a space for art, and that really in a way comes from my interest that I've had for a very long time, starting, I mean, in 2003 was the first time I made a show, which I like to call my first virtual reality show, although obviously there was no virtual reality, and it was Pinocchio. So 3 people sitting in the back of a car, traveling through the city, and the idea was that the object of observation was the city itself. This was a show that I did with Gemma Brockes from Shunt. Okay. And we worked together for a bit, and under the name of Berlin, Nevada. And now we're basically just going around as Silvia and Gemma, just because we realized that having too many names isn't actually useful for the industry. I think it is very important for how I then developed the work. It's the idea was that everywhere we went, and we took the show to Japan, to Ireland, to Italy, all over a few places in the UK, Tel Aviv, and as usual, a little bit, because that's how I work, the structure is fixed, but then it adapts to the cities. So we would know what kind of neighborhoods we wanted to explore, to get maybe a rich neighborhood, then a very industrial area, then something with water. And everywhere we went, we looked for real news.
Combining all of those things, all of those elements where memory and the artistry of filmmakers and musicians comes in to create your own identity as a professional working artist in the industry. That is what I have been able to observe in this duration, and that is what I have been able to extract. And I think overall I would just say it was a huge time of learning for me. It has been very encouraging, to say the least, because of her identity as an artist that works between cultures in that space that she occupies as almost a traveling storyteller. She makes you experience this entire world with a slightly shifted perspective, and I think it's going to be really helpful for me, along with my other placements and the other people that I had the chance to meet. Overall, this entire module, this entire research project, combined with the placements that I did have the opportunity to partake in, they have been very enlightening, just in the sense of how the ground reality functions, the ground reality of the industry functions. It's all about the people, it's all about the crews, it's all about knowing what you bring to the table and what others can bring to the table, and making that work in a respectful and smooth manner to create something of worth.
Applaud now.
And now.